we now have a ton of brand new details on the future of Elite Dangerous for this year. On screen right here, you can see the brand new upcoming ship, the Kestrel Mk2. We've got details on the next big update, operations, and exactly what that's going to be about. We've also got a full-on roadmap for the year ahead, which tells us just how many ships are going to be released this year, as well as the fact Frontier are reworking a core aspect of the game. So let's start with operations. Frontier described these as group-based scenario content. We know a little bit about this, but Frontier expanded on the details right here. They're structured content that's been designed for playing with friends, but you can also play with random players as well through a matchmaking facility accessible via a lobby. So yes, that means the accessibility of this whole new update is going to be very easy. That seems to be a design philosophy here. Essentially, if you have access to a port somewhere in the galaxy, a station, a ground port, anything like that, then you can join up and enter operations. And you'll also be able to search a lobby to be able to play with people you don't actually know. Now, there's going to be a variety of different gameplay here. You've got ship plus on-foot combinations, which we've spoken about before. So that means basically operations is explicitly designed to include on-foot content. That's ground-based gameplay or gameplay inside the megaships, as well as in-ship content. That would be a spaceship content. So some operations do a switch between the two, whilst some other operations will be on-foot only or in-ship only, and this will depend on the scenario. The devs also recommend that your team that you take along prepare with different roles in mind, because different scenarios may demand different capabilities. On the subject of difficulty, the devs have said that they want operations to be challenging, but they also want the control of this to be in the player's hands. And that means that there's going to be different difficulty levels between operations, and there'll also be different types of operations as well as operations at different lengths, and players are going to be able to choose what fits their preferences available at the time. They also say that the devs are mindful of players' time here and want operations to help people from different regions get together depending on the time zones. A big question that some of you may have is, what is the point in doing these operations? What purpose do they serve? Well, it turns out they have a variety of different purposes. Some of these are wider and they relate to the game itself and the impact that operations will have on the games. The others are more personal, down to what sort of rewards and progression you will get. So focusing on the rewards, one of these will be credits. That's not surprising. This is the standard in-game credits, of course. But another thing here is a new in-game currency that's going to be earned specifically from doing these operations. So the new currency will be able to be spent on modules with unique effects, new engineering blueprints, mods for weapons and armor, as well as a few other things that they didn't go into details on specifying. Now, I'm a bit unsure why they're going down the new in-game currency route here. Perhaps they feel the credits are a little bit too easy to get, or there's too many in the game, and this allows them to put new modules inside the game whilst giving you a new way to unlock them. However, I'm also a little bit concerned that it may open up microtransaction options here to buy these modules. We'll have to see on that one. Pure speculation, of course, but this is just me being a little bit cynical. Either way, very good to see that Frontier are giving rewards for players doing this new content. Now, in terms of the wider impact on the game itself, the devs say that they have put in place an opportunity here to tie operations into power play. And this will basically, well, the way they describe this is that you can choose a power that you want to undermine. The game then provides locations and systems where you can run an operation. And then completing the operation successfully will grant you merits, and it also undermines that specific system. So it's also very clear here that this new update is not going to be completely independent from the main game, but heavily integrated with it. Now at launch, Frontier have said that they plan a group of large-scale operations as well as a group of small-scale operations. They say both groups are going to be coming immediately at launch, and the other interesting thing here is that after launch they plan on releasing additional operations, and that these will be based upon player feedback. I think it's worth pointing out here that Frontier said they see the operations update as a method to deploy content as much as anything else. Specifically, they say, so operations itself for us is as much as a deployment platform for content as anything. So this update is still a little way off. It's planned for April, not too far away, but not immediately next week or anything like that either. But yeah, it looks like they're spending time on this to make sure they get it right. Okay, let's talk about the new ship, the Kestrel Mk2. So who's the ship for? What's it about? What makes it different? Well, this is a combat-focused ship. It's small, it's fast, it's nimble. The unique selling point for this specific ship is essentially hypermobility. They want an extreme amount of agility and maneuverability from this ship. They also say that it's got enough firepower to be able to compete with larger ships, even though it can't necessarily match their defences. Whilst I wouldn't say the weapons on this ship are not going to match that of an Anaconda or any other large vessel, it sounds like nonetheless the weapons here are going to be way more powerful than what we're used to on a smaller ship. In terms of design inspirations, the team have said that they've studied and taken inspiration from the Vulture as well as the Eagle. They said they also took some inspiration from modern military aircraft, but wanted to make sure that the design they went with ultimately was suitable for a space-based environment. Now, there's also some features here in terms of animation. Look at here, you can see large thrusters on the wings. These actually animate and they gimbal, they rotate as the ship pitches and manoeuvres, kind of giving a sense of life to the ship itself, a feedback loop as it were. The Kestrel Mk2 then is made by Core Dynamics, who of course have known for the Eagle and the Vulture, and it's a manufacturer here that really fits the idea of a small, fast and nimble aircraft. It's also worth mentioning here that as with the recently released new ships, this does have a unique module and a unique piece of equipment. We've seen that with all the other recent ships, and the same is true for the Kestrel Mk2. Here, they've got a Mark II weapon. Basically, this is a shock cannon, very similar to what we've seen before, except the difference here is that it has a built-in plasma slug special effect. The plasma slug special effect takes ammo from your fuel tank rather than normal ammunition, and that means that essentially, to all intents and purposes, as long as you've got fuel, then you've got ammo. In other words, basically infinite ammo here. Another interesting ability of this ship is directly related to its maneuverability, and this is connected to the boost function itself. Now, you know, when you use boost, it does give you increased speed, and to some extent it does give you a better maneuverability, at least in some ships. That has been magnified here because the boost does directly tie to the ship's maneuverability. In other words, the idea here is that when you boost, it reinforces the theme of agility. It lets you fly around enemy ships far more effectively. It's nice then to see Frontiers focus on a small ship. I do like the small ships inside this game, and the combat focus is a very nice touch indeed. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the Vulture, so I'm keen to see what the Kestrel Mk2 is actually going to handle like. The ship itself is scheduled for release on the 24th of February. That's when it's going to be going into early access, so that means, you'll be buying it with ARX if you want to pick that up. Otherwise, it will be a bit of a wait before it arrives into in-game for in-game credits. And now we come to the 2026 roadmap. Now, straight up front, this isn't full-on detailed roadmap that you might expect to see from some studios. Essentially, what we've got here is what we could class as a phased release. It gives us a bit of a plan, a bit of an outline as to what Frontier intend to release and when they're planning on releasing it. So yeah, this is a good indication as to what's ahead. So they're starting off with the release of the Kestrel in February. We can see that right here. They're then moving on to the April release, which is Operations. That's Phase 2. That's also going to be released alongside a new ship. And remember, Frontier are classing this update as a deployment platform for content that can expand over time. Very curious to see how that actually plays out. Now, we also know, of course, that operations were delayed from last year. They should have been released at the end of last year. So they say a little bit of a delay, but no, 4 or 5 month delay? That's quite a bit more than a little bit of a delay. But nonetheless, it is coming. In the second half of 2026, no months are given beyond this point, we've got a lot more ships arriving, as well as a new big update, which Frontier are classing as a deep core system rework. And then they also spoke about some ongoing story as well. So the second half of the year, we can expect to see a number of new ships. These are going to be released at regular intervals throughout the year. We can see quite a number of them here. And then there's work on a core system of the game. Frontier explicitly said that this affects many aspects of Elite. They won't go into details on exactly what this is, but they did say that it's deeply situated within the actual core of Elite, and it does need a bit of tender loving care, a bit of TLC to make sure they get it right. And they also figure of how deep they're going to go to actually best fix all this, and they do say, they kind of imply very strongly that this is a matter of fixing something, that isn't working optimally, or they've been looking at something, a core component of Elite, for quite a while now that they really want to improve. They also said in addition to improving this, they're probably going to bolt on and add some new features that are going to be built around this rework. So they have spoke about reworks like this in the past, and the previous times they did it, we ended up with the rework on Power Play 2 as well as the rework on Squadrons. Essentially, as I've said multiple times throughout the years now, Frontier appear to be rebuilding Elite Dangerous more or less from the ground up, but just component by component. And then very briefly, they touch on the story for Elite Dangerous. They say that there are mysteries going on here, that they are going to ramp up across the year, but they didn't want to go into details on this because obviously they want to avoid spoilers. But they did suggest that there may be a bigger punch towards the end of the year in terms of the story. So there we have it. That's the 2026 lineup for Elite Dangerous as it stands right now. What stands out to you the most? What part are you most excited to try? What are you keen to look for? What are you keen to actually get your hands on when these updates actually arrive? And more than that, what do you think Frontier might be planning on with this core update? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. There is another one on the screen right here. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time.